Change isn't just coming, it's already here. This is Ask for Change podcast, hosted by leadership expert Meridith Elliott Powell. Brings you weekly conversations with leaders and experts who are redefining success in a world of disruption. Let's begin today's journey and turn uncertainty into your competitive advantage.
Well, that's about my favorite thing to do, is to turn uncertainty into your competitive advantage. I'm Meridith Elliott Powell, your host, and I got to tell you, you are in for a real treat today. It is rare on this podcast that we get somebody who's rolled up their sleeves, had their hands in the dirt, and really understands what it takes with companies to really turn uncertainty to competitive advantage. We're about to dive deep into a conversation with Jim Alling. Now, Jim, he has covered some really impressive companies, everything from Nestlé to Tom's Shoes to T-Mobile. I mean, some of the biggest names that we know, and he has been there in those leadership positions. And lucky for us today, we're going to dive into his lessons learned. So Jim, welcome to the show.
Meredith, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on the show.
I got to tell you, I was so intrigued by your bio. I mean, you've just been with some really impressive companies. And how does a young man from Decatur, Illinois, jump off on this journey? Give us a little bit of background.
I'll try to keep it brief because it's a long story. First of all, Decatur, Illinois is a great place to grow up. As a kid, it was Midwest. It was small. It was in the middle of farm country. We all thought we were middle class. We didn't really know any different. I didn't know there was an upper class, and we didn't really see a lot around us that felt like poverty. But it was back in the days. I was born in the 60s in 61. So you could ride your bike around all over town and, maybe get into trouble, but nothing too serious. So for me, that is all I knew. But really what changed the path of my life, and there's so many things that can change, the direction you go. But I had an opportunity to study abroad for a summer in high school. I was selected for an international exchange program. Mm-hmm. And I went to live in Limache, Chile, which is a small city within Chile. And at the time, I had never been on an airplane.
Wow.
I did not speak Spanish, and I was going there to live for 11 weeks with a family that spoke no English. I went to school because it's Southern Hemisphere. My summer vacation was during their school, and there were so many experiences there. A lot of them being homesick and away from what was comfortable for the first time, but also recognizing that type of change, if you embrace it with a positive attitude, can literally change your life and change who you are as a person and what you want to do. So when I came back to Decatur, Decatur was still Decatur, and Decatur is still Decatur. It's a great city, great place still to raise kids, but it just felt smaller than when I had been there before. And I just had this hunger and curiosity about other cultures, other places, other things. So went on, studied in college, but actually went to an international business school to get a master's in business administration from an international school. It's called Thunderbird out in Phoenix. Yeah. And that gave me exposure to opportunities. And one of the opportunities actually allowed me to work internationally in an internship down in Mexico, where I was, at this point, I was strong enough and fluent enough in Spanish so I could do all my work in Spanish, and talk to groups and, be in meetings that were all in Spanish. And that, once again, gave me a great amount of confidence that I could go into an unusual circumstance, maybe what many would see as a challenging or crushing experience, and turn out learning a lot in the process, recognizing I didn't know anything. But that experience, along with some of the other things I'd done in my life, gave me a chance to start with Nestlé. And I spent 12 years with Nestlé. And I honestly think I would have retired from Nestlé if there wasn't the need for a move that my wife and I did not want to make. At the time we had, I won't go into the full story, but I would just tell you, we had a son who had significant respiratory issues. and could not live in the Los Angeles area. And that was where the company's headquarters were. They wanted me to move back to the headquarters. It would have been a promotion, but it would have been something where at least at that point in time, this is 97, the air quality just wasn't good enough for a child who was 3, who had really, from a very premature birth, had really damaged lungs. So, I told Nestle, hey, love the company, never looked around, but I can't do this, because while I'm loyal to Nestle, I'm way more loyal to my family, and I've got to do what's right for us. So my wife was fully on board as well, and I helped Nestle transition the business that I was running back down to Los Angeles. At that time, we were in the San Francisco area, and I looked around for a job. And I will tell you, when you look for a job, Meredith, a lot of times you say, okay, these are the things I'm looking for. Yeah. And you make that list, maybe your top 10 list or whatever, and you even rank order and weight the importance of each one. Like, well, the title's going to be important, or the money's going to be important, or the boss that I have. For me, the top of the list was air quality of the city we moved to. Like, we needed a city with good air quality, and we needed good PT and OT and other special medical help for our son at the time, who was still, he was delayed, and really needed extra help. And I was just fortunate enough that there was a job available at Starbucks Coffee, launching their coffee into grocery stores. And at the time, they had not launched anything into grocery stores. So, I'd been with Nestle. I was a vice president there. I'd run a lot of packaged goods things. So the idea of bringing Starbucks, which I thought was a phenomenal brand, into grocery stores seemed like a slam dunk. So we moved up to Seattle, which really became our home for the next 25, 30 years, but moved up to Seattle, and just Starbucks was a tremendous growth experience. Again, a big change, but I saw that change as opportunity when I was leaving Nestle. And I joined that company. They had just under 1,000 stores when I joined, and I was there for 11 years. And I was given a chance to do, had successes on things. So I was given a chance to ultimately become the president of all the U.S. stores, which at the time was about, 7,200 stores and probably 125,000 people in that organization. So I was president of that. And then also I was running the international business as president of international for Starbucks at one point, which is when I actually chose to leave Starbucks, because the international travel, it's a great job. I love the company. I still am a Starbucks supporter, but it was just so hard to be gone from the family. I was gone 35 weeks my last year, and a lot of that was weekend stays. You can't, because we were at the time in 45 different countries. So to go to Asia, you just don't go on a 3-day trip. You go and you stay for a couple of weeks, you spend the weekend. And our kids at the time were freshmen, 8th grade and 4th grade, all boys. And I felt like I was an absentee father, absentee husband. And I did that position, close to 2 years. And it got to the point where I realized I don't have a balanced life. I didn't feel like I was completely present anywhere I was, or it was difficult to be present. And, stepped away from the company. Company was very understanding, and just took some time to re-engage with my family, like a year, just getting
back into it.
Walking my son to the bus stop was a big highlight of every day. It's like, wow, it's great. I was, back in a position where I could coach their teams again and things like that, which I'd done when they were younger. So again, I was fortunate. There was a position at T-Mobile for the chief operating officer. That job came open, and that was the number 2 job at the company, reporting right into the CEO, and had just a tremendous time at T-Mobile. I was there 6 years. At that point, I decided it was time to retire, and that was going to be it. It really was. But I got a call from someone who worked for me in international at Starbucks, who was now at a company called Tom's, which I actually thought was the toothpaste and deodorant. And somebody said, hey, would you like to go to work for Tom's? And I was like, no, I don't want to do toothpaste and
Yeah.
deodorant. And, she said, no, it's not that company. It's a very different company, and different in a good way. And she knew I really had an interest in philanthropic causes, and I've been involved in a lot of things throughout my life and my career. And Tom's, for those who don't know it,
Yeah.
was a company that was really very early trend setting, what I would call conscious consumerism, where if, in that company's, model, for every pair of shoes they sold, they gave a pair of shoes away to a child in need, which, I mean, they did it when I was there. The company reached over 100 million, different gives, which meant they'd sold 100 million shoes, but they'd given away. And they continue to do that. So that was I told you I was going to try and keep it short. I failed, but
no. It's really fascinating. Jim, I got to tell you that the thing that really strikes me in reading about you and listening to you is you seem very clear and very confident in what are your values and what are your priorities. And I think a lot of people, especially in corporate America, believe that's what they are, but the actions don't manage to that. Where did all of that come from? I mean, really, you stepped away from some really, really big jobs. And, the first one, okay, we understand. I mean, most of us with a child in need would do what is right for the child. When we get beyond that, we certainly want to be present parents. We want to be present spouses or significant others, but far too often what comes out of our mouth and what we say our priorities are can be two totally different things. But you seem so clear and so confident in that.
I'm glad I at least appear that way. I think there was definitely some struggling, Meredith. But what I can tell you is, I always, even in the executive positions, large companies, I always spoke about how important it was to be a good dad, a good husband, a good friend, a good son to my parents. And when I think what happens is, when you feel like you're not doing that, if you really value that, and I do value that, you start to lose some of the energy and joy that you get out of the job. I mean, jobs are stressful anyway. And I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. There were birthdays I missed, and we'd make them up on a day when I wasn't traveling. And there were teams that I started coaching and I had to step away from because, I wasn't doing a good job because I was traveling too much and dumping all the weight on the assistant coaches. So, it wasn't like when I was, 11 years with Starbucks at the senior executive level the whole time. It's a demanding thing. Same thing at T-Mobile.
Oh, yeah.
It was just, in the Starbucks case, what really did it to me was how much I had to be gone with the international job. And that job, by the way, if it's your only thing in your life, it's intoxicating. You're staying in some of the coolest places around the world. Your business partners that partner up with Starbucks are not just incredibly accomplished business people with inside tickets to everything and all that. They were also really good people, really entertaining, really interesting. Like I'm a curious guy. I like to learn from people in different cultures. So I think if I were single, unmarried at that time with no children, I don't think I would have left that role. But
right.
I was gone all the time. And I'll try and keep this a short story, but it really hit me because my wife is so gifted at so many things, but math is not one of them. I was the homework guy for math. And I was with my middle son, the one who was so premature. And I think he was 7th grade, maybe it was 8th grade, I think, by this point. And I was in Shanghai, China.
Yeah.
So I'm in Shanghai in my room, and it's early morning there. And I'm doing math with him that, the day before evening. So we're on the phone and I'm on with him and I'm trying to explain a math problem. And I'm getting pings from the lobby. We're going to meet, some government officials. So this is a big meeting that I don't want to blow off. And I'm going back, and I was like, and he said, yeah, Dad, that's the answer. That's right. But you're not doing it the way we learned in class. So let me explain it to you the way we have to do it in class. And I mean, I'm not proud of this, but I just lost it with him. I said, Brett, it's the answer. Figure out how to apply it. I don't have time. I have to go. And I hung up the phone, and I might as well have not gone to that meeting. I can't remember a thing about the meeting we had with the government officials. I'm sure everything went okay, but I just kept thinking, you have sold out. You are not the person you said you were. And for me, that was the epiphany where it's like, I can't keep doing this. And I didn't just turn around and leave right away, but I started talking with Howard Schultz in particular and just saying, hey, I just don't think I can do this. And I realized at that company, you can't just step down, take a sabbatical and go. You can work on special projects, but I had no interest in that. I loved being in leadership roles. I loved helping manage teams. And I mean, that was an inspired group of people that I got to work with. And anyway, so for me, it's when you realize you lose your joy, I guess. Selfishly, it looks like I'm doing it because of my values. I guess my values is why I lost my joy, but I lost my joy in that international job because I felt like I was losing myself. And if you start to lose that joy, you're better moving on. You're better doing something else, whether it's something that forces it or something you recognize in yourself that you can't get up for work. You can't get excited about what you're going to do.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm such a believer that we're so full of energy, and whenever you lose sight of your priorities, the things that are most important to you, you don't have the energy to do the job. You don't bring the same energy because you're worried. You think you should be at the kids' soccer team, or you haven't had dinner with the family in a week, and you just never bring that same level of energy. But I tell you, the thing when I was reading over you've learned so many incredible lessons from the work that you've done in the leadership positions that you've had. But the thing that struck me when I was reading about you was you have been in leadership positions in companies that have a lot of pressure to produce results for shareholders. And typically when you work with leaders who are in that type of situation, the last thing you really hear them talking about is the engagement level, as you said, flipping the org chart upside down. But you've been so clear about how people are the engine and the important part of the business. Talk a little bit about that and your philosophy around it.
Yeah, and I would say it's a philosophy I really saw in action and really learned from it from my time at Starbucks. In particular, I had a mentor, a guy named Howard Bihar, who just embraced and lived servant leadership. Even as the company, and he was there very early days, he wrote a birthday card to every single person in that company and signed it personally all the way through. I mean, he was incredible. But what he really, really helped me understand is if you flip the organization chart and really put the people on the front line at the top of the organization chart, and then you as the president of that country at the bottom, that's actually the way it should be, because they're right up next to the customers, your guests, the people who come in and understand. So they are the most important people. They're the ones that will determine whether somebody becomes a loyal customer who wants to come back 20 times a month, or somebody who goes in and say, I think they were standoffish, they were rude to me, I'm not going back to that place. And and they have the greatest knowledge. You don't need focus groups. You need to listen to your people on the front line. They're there every day hearing that people want extra whipped cream at no charge, or extra caramel at no, and you're the furthest. Now that's me as the president. Here's your front line. They're right there next to the customer, and I'm down here furthest away. So it would be so stupid not only seek out the knowledge they have, but also go there and understand, what can we do? What can I do? What can my team do to help you be even more successful. And in those days, Starbucks was doing very well, and continues to off and on. But the whole idea was listen to the front line, and you will get the best ideas. You'll get the most practical ideas, and sometimes they aren't the right ideas. Sometimes, but you'll know that if you talk to enough people that one's an outlier and probably may not be worth doing. This one, everybody agrees, if we just did this, we'd be in a better position. So he taught me to be very good about that. He also taught me that you can't consider yourself to be too good or too smart to roll up your sleeves and get stuff done. I mean, it was not uncommon to go into a store, and if they're having troubles, like they're backed up, you just say, how can I help? And sometimes they'll tell you, just clean the lobby, clean the bathrooms, do something. And this is, me as the president going in, and, I had a reputation. There was one store, they made a big deal out of it. They gave me a plunger because I went in, I said, well, how can the bathroom's overflowing? We need somebody to get in there and plunge that thing. And I grabbed the plunger, went in there and did it. And at one of their regional meetings, they presented me with a plunger. It was one of my,
I bet one of your, it's so true. I can always tell when I'm working and I'm consulting with companies what their longevity is. And I think one of the symbols of longevity is how much leadership is willing to roll up their sleeves and get in there and go to work. I remember a million years ago, I waited tables, and we used to have a district manager come in and would grade us. And more than a few times, he was in there when we were getting completely slammed and we were understaffed. Yeah. And he would sit in the booth and not help us. And and the companies know, their franchises know is no longer here today, but it's not surprising, right?
Yeah, no, it was. So that's where I learned the lesson, though, Meredith. And throughout my career, I was given credit or was promoted or, advanced in the company using ideas that I didn't come up with, but really shining the light on those ideas and say, hey, if we do this, I think this can work because this is what the top performing managers are telling me that they do, that the other ones feel too encumbered to do. We got to take the encumbrances off and allow them to use their best judgment. And that was, Howard Behar, this gentleman I talked about, who was the first head of stores at Starbucks, hated the word policy. He said, policy is too, he says, we have philosophies. He said, our philosophy is we will just say yes. We will trust the judgment of our people on the front line. And sometimes they'll make mistakes, but we don't want someone to a customer saying, our policy is we can't accept. At the time, people used to pay with cash, but we can't accept $100 bills. There was a policy at that time. And he goes, if you can't take the $100 bill, give them the drink for free if you don't have change. He said, but if you got change, give them change. If we get stuck by a counterfeit ring, we'll catch up to it. But in the meantime, what you're saying to that person with the 100 is, I don't trust you. I don't think you're a good person. And that sticks a lot more than getting counterfeited by somebody, which can happen too. I mean, there are bad actors out there, but the belief was most people are inherently good, and most people want to be respected and feel seen and feel heard. And if you do that, you're probably going to get somebody who wants to come back because you just give them a little uplift in their day by believing in them.
Yeah, I've always felt you're going to grow far more through trust than you are through protection, right?
Absolutely.
Like certainly you'll get the ding now and then where you maybe should have protected something, but far more often. Jim, it's hard to believe, but we are coming to the close of this podcast, and I always like to end with two questions, and you can answer them either direction. The first one is, how do people find out about you? How do they find out about your work and your incredible career? And the second is, we are living in unbelievably uncertain times, and certainly in the businesses that you've run and you've led and the people that you've worked with, you've faced a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
What is your greatest piece of advice for our audience, those out there struggling to grow a business, deal with the shifts in the marketplace?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the easy one, which is the first question you asked, how can you follow me? Not easy, because I'm not really on social media, honestly. I don't have a great desire to be. If you want to see my LinkedIn page, that's the one thing that I do keep active. If somebody is listening and they say, God, I'd like to ask that guy, Jim, a couple more questions, I'll just give you my email address. And I don't mind.
You're so
it's
awesome.
So it's jimalling17@gmail.com. I'll spell my name out, JIMALLING17@gmail.com. That was one of my early baseball numbers. So.
I love it. I love it.
Playing baseball as a kid. As far as advice for facing uncertainty, facing change, embrace it. Embrace it, because change and uncertainty is always going to be there. And there's going to be changes thrown at you and uncertainties you don't expect. I mean, that is the only constant, is change. So you know it's coming. So embrace the fact that it can be a real positive thing. The change from Nestlé for me was so hard. I loved it. I wanted to stay there. It was a change that was forced on me. I had to go find a job for the first time in 12 years since I graduated from school. And I didn't feel sorry for myself. I said, you know what? This is going to be a positive thing. So I guess the best advice is recognize the change and the uncertainty isn't nearly as determinant of your path as your attitude is. What really determines how things are going to go is how you approach it. Are you going to see this uncertainty as something you embrace, that you recognize there can be positive things in it, and then build a plan to turn some of that uncertainty and change into something that you see, hey, here's how this can be a good thing for me. And here's how I can lean into this, whether it's finding a new job and starting on it. But if you just sit back and look at everything that's happening, uncertainty, change, a lot of the vitriol that's out there, you can say, oh my God, it's too scary. I'm almost paralyzed. And if you ever feel yourself getting there, just take that first step and do something positive. Do something that's, okay, I'm really worried about it. I'm being forced to find a new job. So day one, take a walk and think about, what am I going to do? Or for me, I always love to take a run. That's when I did some of my best thinking. What can I do? What's my plan? And build your plan. Day two, you write down the plan. Maybe day one, you get the plan in. But you're not going to solve it all. But the most important step you take is the first one. And then just embrace it. So, I would tell you, without changes that I didn't want, that I resisted, it at least in my life, and I will say I did take that positive attitude after I was like disappointed at first, like, I can't believe this. And I shifted and said, okay, but this is a new beginning. What can we do with this? And every single time I had a change or something that was completely unexpected forced on me, it wound up being something that helped me as a person, helped me as a father, as a husband, as just a friend to others. So I guess that would be the best piece of advice I can give, is just recognize your attitude is the most important part of how you address uncertainty and change.
And your attitude has certainly led to an incredible personal life, professional life, and just experiences overall.
Well, Meredith, it's been a treat. I really enjoyed spending this time with you.
Well, thank you. I got to tell you, it's been an honor. One of the most interesting interviews I've had. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for sharing with our audience. And audience, we'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Ask for Change. And together, remember, we're going to turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. I'll see you next week.